Hello, Aries. Welcome to Soulfire Tarot. My name is Steve, and this is the month of February. Reading for you, Aries, if your birthday is between March 21st and April 19th in the tropical zodiac. So, let's get going. First, I'll be doing general tarot card spread reading. I have two different decks here. I also have Teal Swan's Blind Spot Oracle cards, which I'll do later. And then I'll also be spinning a wheel for two colors that will correspond with chakras and metaphysical themes, something to kind of interfuse. So, here we go. All right, so got a few different cards coming up here. Start to get a spread. So it kind of looks to me like you're going through a process of, with the Queen of Wands reversed, this looks like you're going kind of through perhaps like a life review of sorts, you know, where certain things that you might have felt impassioned about, whether it's a relationship, work, job, creativity, or just kind of the status of life, the state of existence, is kind of undergoing review. But at the same time, it's kind of communicating to me that you're not totally divested necessarily, but that it's a time to kind of maybe take refuge in that which you've cultivated, you know, that which is reliable, that which you have cultivated in your life, perhaps in relationship, the different relationships you've worked on. This is the Ten of Pentacles here, and we have this imagery of a man, tending his roses. So the other card that came up is the universe here, so yeah. And I think generally collectively we're definitely going through kind of like a period of strife and reinvention. Yeah. And so with the universe here, there's two wands. She has these arrows. She's nude, which kind of communicates like this a certain kind of vulnerability, but a rawness. Like it's just vibrant. There's a certain kind of vibrancy, and essentially, like the world is our oyster. It's what we make of it. So I'm kind of getting this sense that there's kind of an opportunity to kind of like recreate things in a way that might be coming up for you. Let's keep drawing here to get some added clarity. Yeah, so I drew the Two of Swords underneath the Queen of Wands reversed. You see at night here, there's this Wonder Woman looking sort who is, she's got these two swords in her hand, and there's the rose in between. Now, this is the Rosicrucian deck of the Order of the Golden Dawn, so there's a lot of that theme in here. The rose, or the Holy Rosy Cross, has to do with like the divine inner sanctum of the inner heart, essentially, or like the Christic heart, like of the redemptive, ascendant, transcendental kind of heart of Christ, the metaphysical Christ, in a sense, that we all have within us, that ability for us to ascend and transcend and overcome and redeem ourselves as a soul, from like the idea of, sin, proverbially, missing the mark, kind of like imperfection, that we have this redemptive kind of quality that we can turn to. So just in general, that's a general theme thing here. But we see how she is kind of like kissing there. So, this is suggesting to me that there might be some dreams here of new romance perhaps coming in, or that you're in a position where you're waiting and you're ready for a new kind of relationship to come in. So let's draw on that a little bit more for those of you that it's resonating with. Yeah, okay. So I got this card last night with a different reading. Here we have another sword suit, the Eight of Swords, but one of the ways I work that I think is a little bit different, as I'm still learning, and I'm also highly intuitive myself with visual symbolism and stuff like that. I'm kind of seeing like this woman here this is a person who is kind of like vulnerably has their heart on the line. They're kind of like in this position of surrender. You can see again these eight swords through four different hands are all kind of converging on that center cross of her heart, and she's in this position of surrender. So in some senses, I think this is kind of speaking to the idea of, like opening your heart and surrendering to this universal kind of abundance, the flow. And some of the teachings of like Abraham Hicks and the, manifestation metaphysics sometimes has to do with like our desire, or from like a soul level, that which is kind of in line with our evolutionary growth as a soul. Sometimes the things that we truly desire in our heart's desire that are aligned with like our highest good and the greatest good for our life's lessons, integrations, or completeness, really sometimes we get in our own way. Oh, the camera is glitching a bit. Webcam. Anyways, sometimes we get in our own way, if we're clinging too securely or too tightly, towards the thing we desire, and trying to want and expect a certain specific outcome, which sometimes things can be highly specific, but sometimes, what comes into our life manifestationally when we're in the flow through synchronicity, and we're following our inner guidance, and we're following the signs, that can be like a practice of faith and transcendence in through the unknown, with a higher trust in surrendering that there is a higher power that can guide and flow through the universe, kind of from the center inside out, and it's this idea that the universe wants to kind of like provide every desire that we might have, and then it's just a matter of like the steps in the way, or whether or not it's truly in alignment, because it's always self-optimizing, So, I mean, to kind of put this in the contrast, like let's imagine somebody evil, right? Somebody who is, maniacal and wants certain selfish things, to a certain extent, they might be able to manipulate things to get what they want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the universe is going to kind of like clear the way for that to happen. Do you see like the difference? Like when it's in alignment and it's in coherence with like the totality of the intelligence operating behind existence, versus trying to force to get something. So again, this is with relationships, is suggesting something about surrender and kind of being in a state of open receptiveness, and trusting your heart, really, because the power of the heart is transcendental. Our mind can split things off and we can get entangled in our thoughts, but the heart is seamless in connection with the field, the living field of reality, of relations, of everything. That's how we can communicate with animals, or like communicate with, ancestor spirits, higher dimensional beings. It's like the heart is, it's in and out, all through the seamless flux and the polarity, but it grounds it all together. Whereas our head or brain is kind of split, and it's unified in a bridge, and we can come into coherence, right? Where we feel these things together, and we have heart, brain, heart, mind, coherence. And then our energy field organizes, and it becomes more a harmonic boon for the continuum. So this is me kind of pontificating, but rather educating and speaking on promulgating basically metaphysics to an extent. So anyways, I'm going to do a little bit more reading about that and kind of see how that might go. Yeah, another positive card. Interesting. I spoke too soon. So this is showing that it could possibly lead to heartache, or that there's this burdensome, on the mind. We see somebody here with the 3 swords and the rose petals, so maybe there's something from the past that has harmed you or hurt when it comes to matters of love and the heart. So do be careful. This is suggesting perhaps now with this added clarity that, being in a state of receptivity and desire and dreaming about this, to be careful about that. Maybe it isn't the right time for some of you. Maybe it's, maybe that has to do something like this, where there's kind of like a revision that perhaps like the passions that we've had, maybe it seems like the whole world is kind of going through this reorganization, this reordering, right? With like whole US government change out and stuff like that, right? It's kind of things are getting reorganized, and some things are breaking down, new things are being created. That's just kind of the cycle of life ultimately, and we all go through cycles cosmically. So let me draw a little bit more. I'm going to go from the Rider deck here though this time. What is this about? So what's the guidance here? Interesting. The Knight of Swords. Okay, so this is somebody who is, like kind of quick on their ideas, quick on their mind, Interesting. What does this have to do? I'll go back to the Rosy Cross one. Interesting. All these swords, Aries. My goodness. We have here the 7 of Swords in reverse. So the 7 of Swords here, this imagery is kind of suggesting a metaphor of, like those who are united together like in the sword suits having to do with the mind, rationality, logic, ideas, inspiration to be able to make decisions and things like this. We see an ironclad knight, right, with his comrades, basically, and they're unified here, like they're in battle. But this is in reverse, so maybe this is saying, like, be careful what kind of like battles you choose to pick. How is that relating to your relationships, and how's that affecting your heart? Like what are the beautiful things you do have, that you can find refuge and take peace in and really nurture yourself if things aren't working out, if things aren't going quite as you planned in this agility. But this could also be suggesting, to be nimble with what it is that you desire and how do you execute on that? How do you get there? But also be careful, and you don't want to be too prideful. Think about the way we communicate and how we impact other people. There's the way we come across, right? Sometimes we can say things that can impact people in a negative way and actually be detrimental towards what we're working towards, right? Or what we want, versus the way how we approach things. How can we be in service? How can we perhaps engender getting people to feel an alignment, to find a resonance and be like, oh, I want to support that, versus, hey, I want this, I'm going for this kind of thing. It's the how we get there, how we are, and how we express ourselves. Interesting. So let's go a bit further here. Let's see what else is going on for Aries. Yeah, maybe something to do with work. Interesting. I feel like some of you perhaps might actually, you might be finding yourself in a position where maybe there's a change in work. Maybe some people are actually like losing their employment here. So this is the Five of Wands fire suit, and we see in the upright position, we see this woman basically grappling. You have these two different shaded clouds in the handed divinity with the wands and the pine cone. So this has to do with like basically like spiritual transmission of our desires, our passions. The fire suit, the wands, transmitting will. Power essentially, but it's in the reverse here. We see here she's kind of like grappling with all these different things as if there's like adversity and kind of like battling for certain ideas. You have these smaller beings, some of which look like babies, but they're just smaller forms of humans, but in the reverse here. So perhaps again this kind of touches on what I was kind of picking up here, and like kind of like choosing our battles. Is it like really worth fighting for? Perhaps in some way the release, the relinquishing of employment or some kind of position or status that we might have is actually serving our higher good, and perhaps this is what this was possibly resonating in part with, as well as this kind of like understanding that surrender. It can be scary. It can be scary to let go, to really let go. But sometimes, everything that we truly need and or desire, sometimes together, sometimes separate, sometimes what we need isn't really what we want, but it's going to serve us in the best way. And that's this whole thing between the head and the heart, right? The self-identified ego, right? I am this, I am that, I am that, I am not this, right? Versus like, I'm being, that being transcends our identity. Identity can be exceptionally powerful, right? We have that creative freedom to claim as we want to be, right? I claim I am a empowered, eloquent speaker, right? But versus, what's going on in our dialogue, like I am feeble, I am afraid. The power of affirmation is kind of what I'm touching on here a little bit. So interesting. I'll draw a little bit more of that. I'm going to do a general cross here just to kind of add like a higher perspective on top of this total reading. Two cards here. What's at the cross? What's at the cross? Yeah, the Ace of Swords. Lots of swords here. Lots of swords here, Aries. And this. Interesting. The Fool. Interesting. Yeah, again, I feel like there's this juxtaposition. This is the Fool in reverse here. So we have the Ace of Swords, right? Like moving in on ideal, capitalizing an idea and making a decision, right? Seizing the opportunity, making choices, cutting ties, separating things out, creating, being decisive, logical, all these sort of things, which interestingly are kind of correlate or at least resonate with like the archetype of Aries, right? The ram, the bull, the go, the like, let's get there, let's do this, that kind of Martian forward, masculine transmission, that kind of like fiery suit, right? But how do you get anywhere if you don't know how to, if you don't have the awareness, right? If you don't know, the logic and reason can serve the heart, right? And vice versa. So, anyways, yeah, but with the Fool here, the Fool is the beginning of the tarot, it's the start of the journey, but it's in reverse, so maybe it's like kind of like there's this, yeah. And again, I feel like it's really coming through just like to be considerate about like your decisions, your actions, and what's coming forward. It's not to say to be afraid, but to have that mindfulness and that thoughtfulness that might make a difference. And let's see what kind of difference that could make. How could that affect the outcome of whatever it is that's coming or that you're desiring and working for here? Yeah. So here we have the two of the major arcana, the Empress. I love this card, and this one's been coming up a lot recently as I've been starting to do readings more. We have kind of the integration of the yin and yang, but this is the feminine side, I feel, of the Magician. Magician is more of the masculine eminence, the directive willpower, like you have a wand, right? This tool of direct amplification of like, my will into reality, abracadabra, as I speak, so it is. Here we have more of the feminine side of this, the inner nurturing, the cultivation, the weaving. I feel like we're kind of in this yin, like the yin aspect, I feel like is kind of the wisdom path at this time, because there is so much action, there is so much change. If we can take the time to actually go within ourselves and really feel and open into that space, into the emptiness, into the potential of the energy and what we cultivate with our minds, thought, actions, and feelings and our intentions, what we can cultivate from inside our heart is beautiful and powerful, and it transcends. It's the inner way through to the excretion of reality, essentially from the inside out, right? Wherever you go, there you are in the center of it. So yeah, this is suggesting, intuition, so perhaps through this kind of like this whole kind of I guess I would say kind of like caution, with regards to how things are changing, where you're going, and where some of your ideas might be challenged or the way that you're communicating it. I feel like what could help kind of balance and integrate this and bring forth the kind of the optimization is kind of taking that time to really kind of like tune in, open up, and go into the inside versus the yang side, which is action, action, action. This kind of modality could help balance things, I feel, and more optimally kind of align to get things in a better position. So interesting. Next, I'm going to do one last card here from the tarot. We have the Devil. Yeah, so this whole thing is kind of highlighting this is kind of let's say like a battle between freedom and bondage. So here we have the Devil. This is the lovers essentially down here, male and female, in the sexes, and the lover's chained. It communicates bondage. But why is the bondage? The bondage to kind of the opposite of our higher self, that which is liberating, that which is radiating, enlightening, and alleviate suffering, not only of ourselves, but of the world. It's the inverse of that. It's like, I'm going to chase immediate gratification. I want these sensual desires, these pleasures and things like eating food, sex, drugs, rock and roll, that whole shebang, right? But there's a cost to that, there's a cost to that kind of lavishness, on a soul and psychological and collective level, so this is kind of putting into perspective of, our actions have consequences, really, truly how we all live and how we live consequently together influences our experience of reality and the degrees of freedom that we have, so maybe you're in a position where this is all about working to gain more freedom, again with the universe. And that's really kind of the place of surrender. Sometimes the place we get ourselves in through our mind, through our actions, through trying to will things to happen, it just doesn't always work out. Sometimes it's just not meant to be, and that can take a lot of humility to surrender to that, to get in our heart. But it's beautiful, like sometimes I can relate in my life right now. I know some people who are going through huge breakdowns of their life. I'm starting this tarot thing, like I got fed up. I was super angry with my job. I'm still working it, but this is more aligned with what I positively want to bring into service that I love doing versus doing something I don't really like doing to get what I want. It's like I'm doing something I want to serve and then get more what I want, right? It's positive versus negative positive. So yeah, interesting. Next we'll go to the blind spots, and then lastly we'll do the random color. So Yeah, this is fun. I love how creative all this can be, and I'm excited to keep doing it more. So let's see here. The blind spot. This is developed by Teal Swan. These are sigil cards. These are oracle cards. So each one, there's a number. I believe it's like 1 through 80 something. But she basically developed this because she felt like the tarot, although it can do a good job to kind of like basically lay out certain things, she always felt like it was lacking in showing the blind spots. So here we go. Teal Swan. If you haven't checked her out, check her out on YouTube. She is amazing, intuitive, very reflective person who's tapped into the collective consciousness. She's overcome and been greatly kind of blessed by the curse of lots of different trauma. She's an extrasensory. She experienced lots of out-of-body things when she was younger, and a lot of those things have turned out to be great gifts for her that she can bring to society. She has some very interesting, deep psychological, psycho-spiritual insights about the human experience, and a lot of practical wisdom from, at least that I found, and I know friends of mine in community have also found. So anyways, let's check this out here. Let's see what the blind spot is for you, Aries, in February. This is going to highlight something that we might not exactly, might be in our shadow, might be out of our awareness. But like tarot and other card readings, it usually shows us what we already know on some level. So here we go. Where? Feeling over here. Yeah, this guy. Humble. The 2. Interesting. So check this out. Beautiful, beautiful symbol. You can almost see how that almost looks like it has Sanskrit, and then the sun, this connection. Interesting. So let's see what this 2 is about. I'll do the reading from the guidebook. Teal's written pages worth per each one. So the blind spot oracle. Number 2 is self-concept. Interesting. So if we have drawn this sigil, your blind spot is your desire to see yourself and for other people to see you as a good person. The ego is the singular identity that you call by your name. It is an amalgamation of all the things you identify with. The things you call I, me, or mine. Ego is self-concept. And we need the ego, right? The ego isn't evil. It serves a very necessary function, being a being, right? Like if we did not, it's like the carrot and the horse, right? The carrot is our desire, right? And our motivation. The horse is like our ability, the animal body, to like follow our instincts to go towards what we need and to survive not only, and then the driver, right, or the passenger is the person who, that's our higher consciousness, overseeing the whole thing and ideally directing it in this framework, so to speak. So anyways, ego is self-concept. Because we are raised relationally dependent in a society in which our survival depends upon each other and has for thousands of years, the only way for ourselves to survive is if we are in the good favor of the rest of the social group. The rest of the social group, beginning with our parents when we were young, have to approve of us. They only approve of us if we are good, right? Within social moral standings of what's correct and appropriate. That is, if we are being in a way and doing things in a way that is deemed good by the specific individuals around us. There's no real clear distinction amongst humans between doing bad and being bad. Therefore, the single most important thing to the human ego or sense of self is to believe itself to be good. Ponder that for a second. This means you have been making other people the bad one in order to see yourself as the good one. I think we're all guilty of that or experience that. Not to say we need to feel guilty, right? Guilt can certainly serve some things, right, in relation to this, but is it ultimately serving you? Maybe, maybe not. Anyways, you have been spending your life consciously trying to become anything that you associate with goodness and trying to see yourself in that. At the same time, you have spent your life trying to avoid the things that associate with badness, and your mind will actively avoid seeing these traits in yourself. Yeah, so it's like kind of like how do our actions, how do our thoughts, beliefs, our just emission of reality from our being, how does that actually play out truly? Are there some things that maybe we've pushed away, that we're resistant to? Are we grasping and attached to this idea that I'm a good person, I'm virtuous, they are the bad ones, they're the wrong ones, but how is this really playing out? One thing, I try to take an integrated view on, like world worldly things, politics, social things like that. And I always feel like one thing that for me helps bring peace of mind and foster understanding and passionate compassion and empathy is understanding at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all flesh and blood. Yeah, we have different makeups. We have different back and forths, different experiences, different levels within hierarchies and, privilege, unprivileged, different obstacles. We all have different karma, right? But at the end of the day, we're all human, and kind of in the Christian or the logos sense, the universal sense, like we all come from the same intrinsic essence. Everything does. And that means we're all equal at some quintessential primordial level. And I think that can be really powerful to contemplate and to realize, sometimes even our enemies, like if we put ourselves in the shoes of somebody else and be like, oh, this person, they're terrible, let's say like Genghis Khan, some murderous person. Yeah, lots of suffering, lots of terrible things done, but again, on some level, that person, what are their needs, like how, I know this is hard, right? This is the Christic ideal, right? Of like, oh, turn the other cheek, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, let's keep reading. I don't want to preach too much, but, for the sake of growth and learning, that's why I'm here. So anyways, if you wish to transcend this blind spot, you must be willing to feel the ineffable discomfort of seeing the parts of yourself that fit into the category of badness. Bad. You have to be willing to see the impact you are having on other people. You have to commit to seeing yourself through their eyes and from their perspective. That can be hard, but let me tell you, that is noble. That is noble. That is worthwhile. When people see somebody who can earnestly own up, be like, you know what? I'm sorry. I was wrong. Or you know what? I see it through your eyes now. I see I was being this way and I'm sorry. Like, I didn't realize, Oftentimes, I think people can they can be forgiving, they can be understanding, and they can forgive us for our transgressions in one way or another, because it shows earnesty to be self-aware, to grow, and to become better. And then we all do better together, because we're all human. We all mess up. We all make mistakes. That's a big part of life. That's how we learn, evolve, and grow, is through making mistakes. But the path of wisdom, the path of higher consciousness, divine providence, serenity, synchronicity, all these things, when we get into the flow, when we're tuned in, and we're in the dynamism of operating with the divine intelligence at play in all life, that's where the beauty and the magic comes. And it's redemptive. There's a story of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, the Buddha, 2,500 years ago or so. As he went through his enlightenment, he gained fame and reputation, and different affluent leaders, kings, nobles, from all over the region wanted to meet him. There was this one king, not ting, simple ting, who was known as a tyrant, who was utterly just murderous, barbaric, totalitarian, the worst of the worst. Things have come so much further than where it was at that time in the age of Aries. So, a war. But this tyrannical, murderous, violent, brutal, evil murderer, right? Tyrant wanted to meet the Buddha, so the Buddha came and met him. How could he say no, right? He's the Buddha. He's just that oneness, peace, equanimity, all that, cosmic conduit. And he met this tyrant, and this ruler was so just ego shattered. The Buddha was able to, through dialogue, through observations, through presence, just crack through the veil, the illusion of separateness, to where this king realized, holy shit, I've been a terrible person. I've accrued all this karma. What does that mean for my experience, for life beyond myself? And following the Buddha's teachings, vipassana. This is what they teach if you ever go to a Vipassana retreat. It was like the boot camp of meditation. 12 days, just silence. It's intense, but it's radically transformational for most people if they can go through it. this tyrant went through Vipassana and just cleansed themselves through just body awareness, through this teaching, this practice of enlightenment, where it just burns away karma, burns away mind body attachments from the inside out, and liberates you to where anybody can get into a state of, like just nirvana, where you're just at bliss with the cosmos. You're just slipping with cosmic waves, just radiating through your nervous system. It's incredible. It's an incredible experience. It happened like clockwork. When I went to Vipassana, they were like, yep, on day 7 to 8, you're going to experience that most likely. And then most people did, so there's something to it. But don't take my word for it. Anyways, yeah. Very interesting. So that's good here. Yeah, sometimes even that's beautiful when life breaks down, when things aren't exactly working out, everything in an optimal sense is always has the capacity to teach us and learn something. We can learn something from it, but yeah. So let's go to the color wheel here to finish things out. I've got a little spinner on my computer. Random color. And what do we have here? Orange. Okay. So this has to do, we have the root and sacral, solar plexus. So here, this has to do with like desire, sensuality, our ability to feel, not quite as high as the solar plexus, but more with like kind of like our creative essence, our belly, our beingness. So let's go to the next color here. As 2 color vibrations / chakras that resonate. And the solar plexus. So this is kind of integrating the lower being of our animal nature, our desires to survive, our feelings, and then what's next above that is the heart, which is the bridge. Or in Rosicrucianism, the rosy cross, right? The integral synthesis of above and below. So perhaps, some mindfulness, some energy work, some reflection. You can Google this and just look up the solar plexus and then basically the yellow and the orange centers here. And maybe there's some guidance there for you if you want to see it on your own. So excellent. Namaste and Lakesh. All the great things. Many blessings. Thank you, holy angels. Thank you, Great Spirit, for aiding in this monthly reading for Aries. All right, like and subscribe. Also, if you feel inspired to donate, if this was of value to you, you can help support me. I would greatly appreciate that on this tarot journey. Thanks. Soulfire Tarot. Peace.